Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Be a Boss Coaching Podcast. My name is Beatriz, and I am an entrepreneur business coach. Welcome to today's episode where I'm going to be talking about the process of my most recent launch that I did for my Clarity and Strategy program. So I want to talk about it because it was a long process. I learned so much from it. And I want to go into detail about what this was like for me. And hopefully, it will give you an idea of how to do this for yourself if you've been thinking about a launch for yourself in the future. And I want to provide maybe, like a template for what to follow. What worked for me may not work for you, but it's a template that you can see, and that's what I want to do today. So welcome. I'm gonna talk first about what I learned from the process of launching this program, because I see it as two layers. It's both learning from the literal process of launching, or what that was like for me, and then also what I learned for myself, really. And I learned a lot about this process about myself, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about that as well. So let's get into it. So this Clarity and Strategy program, what it looks now was totally not what I had envisioned in the beginning when I first thought of this idea. When I had first thought about this idea, it was literally just a one-call service. Let's just have one call. And I think the idea behind that was because I wanted to create a way for people to work with me that was accessible and make it easier for people to not have to think so much about whether they should coach with me or buy my program. I know that when it comes to investing in yourself in coaching, in any coach, it can be a lengthy process. There's a lot of thinking about it because most of the coaching programs out there that you see are four-figure prices, right? And so I wanted to create a way for people to work with me in a way that was accessible and it was low risk. And that was why I decided, what if I just have one call? And in this call, what we achieve is clarity. Like, you just feel clear, you feel lighter about how to move forward, about where to go with your business. So that was the main idea behind it. But I'll take you through the process. I won't talk too much about the creation of this service because that could be an entire episode. It actually was months of from that idea to beta clients, to people testing it out for free, to actually selling it at a very, very low rate, to then growing it to this course, to then a workbook, to then 2 courses. So it's a whole thing. And so I won't get too much into that, but let's go into fast forward to when this process is taking shape. It's like coming together. And I'm going to talk about the launching process, right? So like I said, it was a process that took months for me to finally see what this would look like, to finally flush it out. I enjoyed that it was a collaborative process. It came from an idea that I had, but the way it took shape was not just from my idea, but just actually trying it out with people. So that was really cool. So before you launch, right? Like if you've ever wanted to do a launch for a product or a service, or even your business, right? You got to have a product, right? So that's the first thing. You got to have a product. You got to create the product. And quite honestly, the creation can take you a few days. It can take you a few weeks. For me, like I said, it took me months, and that's okay. Like I said, it was a very collaborative process. And I had this idea. I offered it to close friends, family, and friends. And they tried it out with me. But when I wanted to sell it outside of my close friend and family network, it wasn't selling. It just wasn't. I think also partly because I didn't market it. I think I just created this idea. I'm like, oh, you know what? I want to create a way for people to work with me. And I was like, let me just do one call. And so I think because it felt so simple, like, oh, it's just one call and we're going to price it at, I don't know, $60 or whatever. I wasn't really marketing that. And it felt like I'm not surprised, obviously. And I was in this mindset of testing, really. I was really just trying to test things out. And overall, this program with this idea grew to this workbook and grew into a course and expanded to a 3-call experience. And creating this experience and then creating tangible assets for it, which was the workbook, which was a course, it finally felt like a cohesive product at the end, towards the end of this process. So what I did when finally it had come together, I set up the launch strategy. So this is what I did. I decided to create a free webinar and revolve the launch of my new program via this webinar event, right? So I made sure that I wanted to make this webinar free, and I wanted it to be informative, and I wanted it to be a way where people can come and see the way that I speak, how I present, my framework, how I think about things. And that way I can expose people to me and who I am and me as a person. So I was like, okay, after I had done the program, I had gone through all of these months of working on this program, I was like, I'm going to teach this. So that's why I created this webinar. And the logistical aspect of creating the webinar consisted of creating the registration form. So I created a simple registration form where I put the details of the webinar, what you're going to learn, who this is for, how long this is, obviously the date and the time, and I promoted it as free, right? And in that registration form, I did clearly say that this was the event that was going to launch my program. At the end, I was going to pitch something at the end. So I made that very clear in the registration form, as well as other marketing channels that I had chosen, videos, even the podcast. I had said, this is a free webinar and I will be doing some announcements of my new program and some deals. So that was the decision that I had made around this webinar. So it was a great strategy because not only did it bring people into the webinar who are already interested in the topic that's related to my program, but it also grew my email list by like 28 people. And that was really cool. And And so after creating the registration forms, I had a landing page for the webinar. I created the product sales page. So the page separate from the webinar where I was selling my actual program, I created that with the same platform. I use ConvertKit. I love that platform. I've been using it for a while now. I've gone to a lot of free webinars and workshops where they teach you how to set things up and create products and create webinars and all that stuff. And so I created the product sales page. With the description of the program and a link to the payment, right? So that if you are interested in the program, then you can buy instantly. And so I created the sales page. And then I decided that I was going to do a time-limited discount for participants. And even if you didn't come to the webinar, but you registered, you'd still have access to this discount so that it could incentivize action. So I decided, I was like, okay, I'm going to have $50 off for everyone on the webinar and anyone who registers, really. Like, even if you just registered but weren't able to come, you'd still get the replay and you'd still have access to the $50 discount until a specific time frame. So I decided to do that again to incentivize action. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to create the email sequence for the webinar registration, which was 5 emails over the course of 1 week. I've heard that in other webinars or launches, in that week that they're launching it, or like in the time frame that the cart is open, or even a day before the webinar, that people will send 2-3 emails a day every day until the cart is closed. I decided I was just going to do 1 email a day, essentially. So I was going to do 5 emails over the course of 1 week. And essentially what they were is, once you register for the webinar, there's a thank you email. It says, thank you for registering. The second email was a link to add the event to your personal calendar on Google. So that was the second email. And then the third email was to let them know, bring a notebook, bring a pen, because you're going to learn a lot. You're going to have a lot of information and it's going to be great. So that was the third email. And then there was an email 24 hours before the webinar started to just remind people again, hey, you signed up for this webinar. It's tomorrow. I'm so excited to have you. And then 1 hour before the webinar, I sent out another email just to, hey, this is starting in 1 hour. Here's the link to join. I'm so excited to have you. This is what we're going to learn, etc. And actually, I had another email literally at the start of the webinar at 5 p.m. I sent out another email like, this webinar is starting now. Click here to join. So actually it wasn't 5 emails, it was 6 emails that I sent out. And then I did the webinar. It was successful. I was really happy that, a lot of people came. So 22 people registered for the webinar, it's really cool to have been able to get 22 people to register. And 18 people came. Out of the 22 people, 18 people came. A few people trickled in towards the end or like in the middle, but it was a total, like, at one point I was looking at the number of attendees and I saw 18 and I was like, oh, wow. Actually, a lot of people came. So that was really cool. And what happened during the webinar is that I actually forgot to record. I was going to send out the replay after, but I forgot to record in all of the excitement. And I was like, well, I guess I'll record myself teaching course. and I'll send that out later. So what happened is I had set up post-webinar email, and this post-webinar email was, thank you for coming. It was an amazing webinar. Thank you so much for your support. The cart is now open, and I provided the link to the product, to my coaching program to buy. And of course, with the $50 discount and with the details of this time limited discount of $50 until the end of the week. I did the webinar on a Monday, and I did the time limited offer essentially for 5 days until Friday at 5 p.m. And so I did that. And after that, I set up a different sequence, essentially letting people know that this time limited offer is currently happening now. So on top of the first sequence prior to the webinar, there's another email sequence that I created post the webinar. So now post the webinar, the cart is open, and the email sequence for that was different just because it's after the webinar, right? And this was a 4 email sequence. So number 1 was to let them know, obviously, the cart is open with a link to buy the program and a reminder of the $50 discount. The second email came with the replay. So remember, I forgot to record, but I did record myself teaching it. So I sent that out. And a feedback form to have people provide feedback. And I also included the feedback form at the end of my webinar when I first did that. And that was really helpful because people gave me the feedback right away, right after the webinar. And then the third email was actually an email with a relevant world event, linking it back to my program. And it was perfect because that week was the same week after the Super Bowl, after all of the commercials, and after Beyonce had dropped her 2 new country theme songs. And I saw it as the perfect opportunity to let people know how strategy is in this event, right? That it was a brilliant strategic move. And so I included that in the email, like, hey, strategy is everywhere. And of course, the link to my program to buy. And then the final email, the 4th final email, was a final reminder that Friday, I sent it out on that Friday at 9 a.m., I believe, was the last day to receive this $50 discount by 5 p.m. So if you're thinking about buying, I said, buy today by 5 p.m. Again, gave them the link. And then I set up another automation for people who bought the product. So if you bought the product, there was another email sequence that you would go into that welcomed you into the program. It gave you the link to schedule my first call, the first call with me, to the link to download the workbook and next steps. So that was the final sequence that I created. I know all of this sounds like a lot of work, a lot of content, a lot of emails, a lot of sequence, just a lot. But trust me, once you know the right buttons to push and how to set this up, and I did this again through ConvertKit, so they have an automation feature that I pay for. And if your email marketing platform does that, if you're paying for features or paying for an email marketing platform, hopefully you do have that feature. And that's how you can launch programs essentially with your email list. So I set that up, and I was really proud of myself because I'm like, wow, like I did it. Everything's like working smoothly after the webinar. Like pre-webinar, during the webinar, post-webinar, like I did all that work. And the strategy was really something that I had talked about with my mentor, Karina. Shout out to Karina of Elevating La Cultura, who is, I was in her mentorship program. So we really flushed this out as a group in the group coaching meeting and then one-on-one as well. And we're like, all right, we're going to do it. This is the date. This is the time. And I felt really accountable to them. So I was like, I have to do it. And so I did. I was like, I'm going to set this up. I already have the course. I have the workbook. I know what this looks like. I've been doing it, working on it for months now. I have beta clients. I have testimonials. So in that process, I also reached out to all of the clients who did this with me, and they gave me the best testimonials, which was amazing, that I included in my webinar as part of my launch and at the end. So that was really cool. And the marketing channels that I used to promote this was obviously my email list and then on Instagram. So during that week prior to the webinar, I was doing lives, doing stories. I did a carousel post. So essentially posting about this webinar. And I promoted it heavily to communities that I was active in. So I'm very active in Gita Zuleta's Cafecito con Jefas group. So I promoted it there, talked about it there. I'm active in other group communities and group chats. And I sent it out to all the group chats that I'm part of, let them know this is happening. I put it on LinkedIn, got some views and impressions. I actually got, I think, a couple people from LinkedIn to register. And I talked about it on my podcast. So if you're an avid listener of Be a Boss Coaching podcast, you probably heard it in past episodes in the very beginning about this program or this webinar happening. And I put the registration link to the webinar in my show notes. So that was the marketing channels that I use: podcast, show notes, active communities that I was in, active group chats that I was in, Instagram, LinkedIn, and also We All Grow Amigahood, which I also posted on there as well. If you're not familiar with We All Grow, I suggest that you check them out. It's a big network of badass female women entrepreneurs and other, not just entrepreneurs, but other creative folks, people in management and business and different fields. So I posted it there. And I was also reaching out to people. I was trying to find people, reaching out to them. And I'm like, hey, let's have coffee. Are you, interested in getting to know one another and chatting? And I did maybe 3 calls that week, 4 calls of people I didn't know, and just chatted with them. And it was really cool. And I invited them personally to my webinar. So it was a lot of work that week, but it was really cool to just see that unfold for me. And that's what happened. So that was the automation process for me, setting up all the emails, the Instagram, all of that. And what I did, the way that I see it now, is I created an ecosystem for this launch to happen. I had been working not just so much on the actual product and the service, but I was creating the ecosystem for this launch to be successful in a way. And for me, the way that I had defined success for this launch, like honestly, very transparently, I didn't really have a goal. I had a very low bar, but I was like, I felt really good about the product. I believe in it, and I believe in the program. And it got validated with my clients, and I felt really good about finally putting this out into the world. The lessons that I learned. So I talked about the launch process and like how I set that up and how I decided to market this and the strategy behind it. The lessons that I personally learned is, number one, I'm okay with taking my time. I'm really glad that I took my time to develop something, even if it's not a whole like four-figure program. Let's say it's literally like a $200 program. It's not it's not a whole, big thing, but I think I just enjoyed creating something in conjunction with a lot of people, with mentors and like beta clients and coaches and even my therapist. So I took my time developing that. And for me, I discovered that it's really important for me to focus on one big thing at a time. Because if not, I tend to not focus on things well and not really create something. So I think this program that I created, if that's the only thing I was working on for 4 or 5 months, I probably would have not taken that long. I think it would have just been maybe like a 3-month process, let's say. But I was doing the podcast and I was also obviously still trying to promote my bigger offer. I was learning a lot last year, towards the end of last year, around my podcast. So podcasting took a lot of work. So I was working on the podcast. I was trying to figure this program out and I felt all this pressure. And I think I realized like, oh, it's okay to take my time and it's okay to focus on one thing at a time. At least for me, that's just the best way that I work. I also learned the importance of building relationships. Nurturing relationships with your community is so crucial, because when it does come time to talk about something new that you're offering, you can activate that and you can go and invite people personally to your program or to your webinar, whatever you're launching. And creating that foundation of trust is so crucial to having a successful launch, or just something that people are like, oh, okay, yes, I know her. I want to support that. So that was really important to me. And that is what I did all of the end of last year, is just like really going to events, nurturing my relationships, talking to people, engaging with people online, going to events in person. It really helped me in the process. And then third, I would say that I really learned to trust my gut and to trust my instincts. That is a theme that has been coming up for me lately, especially over these past couple months, is how trusting myself in this process. And I think, for example, when I was doing the webinar and I had decided that I was going to do that, like, of course, this fear kicked in because I had never really done that. I had done it in a very kind of impromptu way with someone else. But this was like something that I was doing on my own and presenting something. Nobody ever, if you're afraid of public speaking or you're an introvert, not that if you're an introvert, it doesn't automatically mean that you don't like public speaking, but I'm an introvert, so I don't like a lot of stimulation, and like people giving me their attention is very scary. So the thought of doing a webinar, even if it is online, was just super scary. And I think I was like, I know this. this is something I've been working on for 4 or 5 months. Like, I know this. And so when I decided I'm just going to do the webinar, it's like everything just fell into place. I did the email content. I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to the course and the workbook, and just made it so much better over the period of like a day. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So following my instincts, following my intuition played a big role in this, even down to the pricing, right? Like, I was going to price this really low. I didn't mention this, but when there was a beta phase in this whole process where I was selling this for $20, but it was super not flushed out. And that was I made it clear to people who bought this is not flushed out. This is something that is sort of like half baked, but you will still get value because I'm still coach. I still have those skills, so you will still get value from it. But I require that you give me feedback, you give me pricing suggestions, that, you give me you give me information about what you believe would be best for this program and for you as the client, right? And so, yeah, I was able to sell it. I sold it for $20, and I got some really amazing beta clients. I just cannot thank them enough, because they were not just open to the fact that this was half baked, but to give me feedback and suggestions. And so I am so grateful to my beta clients for that. But when this was finally flushed out, it was after having a call with one of my clients. And like, we were talking about, okay, we did our coaching and everything. And it was now we were talking about, okay, so how was this? Did you get value from it? And what do you think? And they're like, yeah, like, it was super great. And I think that we could do it this way. I think you should have a wrap-up accountability call. And in that moment, I remember having this aha moment, like, oh, yes. Okay. If the goal from the very beginning was to get clear, was just like for my clients to experience clarity, then, and this is the process, like, it takes not just one call, but several calls and several like ways to follow up, then let's do that. And I was like, okay, now I know what this looks like. Now I'm like, I just felt so good about it. And so I experienced that aha moment. And that is when I was like, okay, we're going to launch this. It's been in beta long enough. We're going to do it. And so I trusted my gut. And again, though, with the help of coaches and mentors and the spaces that I invested in, Kita's Mastermind, where I would bring this in and flush out as much as I could with questions. And so I trusting myself, my abilities really strengthened my confidence and allowed me to present this program with passion and so much confidence. And that was a really good feeling for me. In all of this really taught me, again, to take my time, to build relationships, to trust my gut. And the process itself goes beyond developing a service, right? I think for me, it's like collaboration, receiving feedback, and constantly making things better. It's never going to be perfect. If you're launching something for the first time, you're going to improve on that all the time. It's just feeling confident in what you can deliver and knowing that you're never going to get to a point where like, this is the end. This is perfect. We can launch now. Like, it's never going to feel perfect. So if you're thinking about a launch, do it. Just do it. I know it may have sounded like a lot, with everything that I talked about. But if you know you have your skills and you know you've been doing something for a very long time and you want to try this launch out, do it. And even if it's a flop, at least you learn from it. Something I did not mention. So in that week, right, that I was waiting if people were going to buy, I was almost certain like, oh, okay, no one's going to buy. It was Thursday night. No one had bought. Friday morning, no one bought. And I was like, all right, well, at least people really enjoy the webinar, right? Like, that was really cool. And I did it. And I was just still so proud of myself that I got 22 people to register and 18 people came. And I was just like still writing that like accomplishment. And that was like, okay, well, I did that. That is enough for me. The next time we can do it better and we can see if a different something, if I tweak something here and there, will work the next time. 420 came around and I saw the first sale come in and I was like, oh, I got one. I was so happy. And then 430 came around, another one came in. Then I think it was like 445 and then another one. And I was like, what? So that was the end result. I didn't talk about that in the beginning, but that is like what happened. And I think I was just so excited that, oh, okay, you know, some people trust me enough to buy my program. So shout out to the clients who bought from me. Thank you so, so much. I was just so excited. I came back at home that day and I told my partner, I was like, I can't believe it, that to the point where I felt flooded and flushed with ideas. What am I going to do next? And how are we going to make this better? And Sean had to bring me down a bit. And he was like, I am so proud of you, but focus on your clients. Like you just, sold this program, which we went out to celebrate later that night. But yeah, and I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on my clients. And I was just so excited that, oh, wow. I did a whole launch thing in it. It wasn't like a whole thing, it wasn't like 15 people like bought or anything, but I think it's still a win. And I'm just really happy and proud about that. So with that in mind, y'all, you can do it. I hope that you try it out and that this gives you a template again, or like an idea of like how to do it. And try it out. See how things work. One thing that I was with my dad when some of the first sales came in, and he was like, you have to give it your best. People bought from you, now you're accountable to them. You have to give it your best. And I was like, yeah, Dad, of course. And there was like a moment of imposter syndrome the next day. I think it was on Saturday morning, where I was like, oh my God, what if they bought from me and nobody, and then they don't feel good about it afterwards? And just for a quick second, I had that thought. And then it just sort of rolled off my shoulders. And I was like, no, stop. You can't do this. And I think that fear though of, oh no, why I don't want to sell something and then disappoint people, that thought can permeate so much to the point where it stops you and you don't do it, or you limit yourself. Catch yourself when you have those thoughts. And that is why investing in a coach or someone that can really reel that in with you, help you through those type of thoughts is so important. So, but I'm really excited. I actually had my first call for one of my first clients who bought earlier this week, and it was a great call. So again, I continue to gather evidence for myself. No, I can do this. I know what I'm doing. I'm fine. This is great. So all of this to say that I'm rooting for you, and go do hard things, go do brave things, go do courageous things, even when you're scared. Reach out to the community and do it scared. Do it scared. This program is still open until March 1st. So I have capacity for 3 more clients. And I'm closing the doors March 1st. That's because I know my capacity. I'm doing this podcast, right? One thing I've learned about doing 2 episodes a week, it's a lot of work. So honestly, I think I'm going to go back to once a week for the next round or season, because it was a lot of work to do 2 episodes a week and to try and do this launch and to do all these things. A lot to think about. So again, that's something I learned. So I'm doing a lot, and I realized I actually feel a lot better and I'm more productive when I do less and I focus on less things. So that's it for me, y'all. If you want, and listen, I am calling this program my Clarity and Strategy program, I am calling it the Costco pizza deal of coaching. Okay, if you go to Costco and you get the pizza there, I think it's what, $2 a slice or something like that, or $3. I don't know how. I used to get it all the time when I was in New York and with my roommate, and every time we would go to Costco, we just go straight to the pizza and the hot dogs and have dinner, and it was this is the best deal in town. This is so good, this pizza. I don't understand why it's so cheap. And that's this coaching program. It is so good for the price, and you get so much value. Get your hands on it. Trust me, it is really good. And if you don't believe me, go read the testimonials. They're really good. But I'm closing the doors March 1st because that's all I can really commit to right now, is just 3 more clients until end of March, end of April. And in April, I'm going out of town. So yeah, I have to close the doors at the beginning of March. All right, y'all. I am so excited. If you like to sign up for my program, you have questions about it, come on over to the show notes, check it out. And let me know if you have questions, DM me. You can send me an email as well. I'm at Be a Boss Coaching. And go check out my website at beabosscoaching.com. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll see you soon. Bye.